What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Ian Wendt Show. Today I have a very special guest for you guys, Tiecha Ashcroft.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being on it.
Of course.
And so we've known each other kind of just through social media for a few years now. You started following me back in 2020, and we'll get to that and we'll talk about that. But you were also in my coaching community, Free Collective.
Yes.
We did some cool things. We'll talk about that as well. But really, the thing that's like more fascinating, and I think the thing that people are going to want to hear the most about, is you homeschool all your kids.
Yes.
And you're very, very well like versed in the homeschooling world. And I think that's something that not only is needed right now, but also a lot of people want to do, but they're like afraid to do for whatever reason it is. So first things first, I always give my guests some gifts. So if you want to grab that black bag right there, we got some gifts in there for you.
All right.
As you pull it out, I'll tell you what you got. Okay, so First Form meat stick. They're amazing.
Right.
They taste great.
I'm sure that'll get stolen from somebody.
yeah. Husband might steal that one. Patriot sticker. Had to throw that in there. And then that, the mag. So
sweet.
OPG Mag Club. I started, you can probably give this to your husband too if he wants.
He's making out today.
I started a mag club. Basically every single month we do a mag that it's like a piece of art, as you can see. And, it represents something that happened that month in our history, in our country, or like pop culture.
Oh, okay.
And it's been really cool. We've been doing it for about 2 years, and it's become kind of like a collectibles thing for people. But yeah, so there's that.
Awesome. I knew about this, and
that was the
seen
July
them,
one, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there was like a connection to the month with them.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
every single one. Yep. And that is our team tee. So I also own the company Official Patriot Gear. You probably know that. That is our team tee. It's a really, really soft, like high quality t-shirt. And just wanted you to have that. Hopefully you like it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Add it to my collection.
Awesome. So yeah, what I really want, like kind of tell everybody your history and just kind of how you got into homeschooling. And then from there, we can kind of talk just about homeschooling in general and the culture and just like myths, or, just really dive into that. I think that'll be kind of where we go.
Yeah, cool. So I'll start pretty far back. Growing up, my mom was a parent advocate for parents with children with special needs.
Okay.
So that kind of started, that's my example of where I learned to be an advocate, was for my mom.
Okay.
And I always knew that my kids would never attend the public school district where I lived in Las Vegas.
What made you feel like that? I can probably guess, but
Well, so Nevada at the time.
Was it because of personal experience, like what you experienced as a kid?
Just kind of in general.
Okay.
Because of what my mom did, I knew the corruption within the district. We were ranked 50th, I believe. Our state was ranked 50th in education at the time. I think we've moved up to now. I think we're at 48.
Hey, how long ago was that? Were you 50?
That was when my daughter's graduating. My oldest is graduating this year. So
wow. Yeah. 2 steps.
So,
all right.
Yeah, we're getting there. But anyway, so I just knew that wasn't an option. Public school wasn't an option. About the time that my oldest was getting ready to start school, there were a couple charter schools that popped up. And that was really exciting to me because it was some school choice that we didn't have before. And so we started this new charter school. And
Are charter schools like private schools? Are they kind of like Montessori? Like, is that a charter school? Is that considered a charter school?
A charter school is actually a public school.
Oh, okay.
They still receive state funds, but they're not part of the school district.
Got it.
So they're kind of their own entity.
Okay.
And the principal was great. We did kindergarten, first grade. Halfway through first grade, the principal just randomly was fired for some BS reason. And they brought in this new principal who came from the school district and immediately started changing things to the way that she did it over at the district. And one of the main things she did was like took away recess, like shortened recess by a lot. And
why do you think, why is that? Sorry, it's always been fascinating to me. Like, why is recess so short? I mean, I get that, you're not learning, quote unquote, but like these kids have to have an outlet.
They do.
And what is it, 30 minutes? I don't even remember what it is. Was it 30 minutes now? I don't remember what it was when I was a kid. I can't remember.
In Vegas, most of the schools they get 30 minutes, and that includes sitting down to eat your lunch, where most schools don't allow you to talk because they're trying to get you through the lunchroom and out, and then the remaining time is on the playground. And then they might have 10 minutes, depending on the school, somewhere else throughout the day. And
it's just insane.
It's crazy. And then they wonder, why are all these kids need ADHD medicine? It's like,
yeah, sorry. Anyway, we're going to get there.
Yeah, we'll
keep
get
going.
there.
Go ahead.
So the new principal came in, took away recess, and I went to our school board meeting and kind of questioned, like, why are we doing this? Got a lot of pushback from the board. Parents were not happy. So I ended up rallying a bunch of parents together.
Good for you.
We went to every school board meeting, just really pressing, like, why are we making these changes? This isn't what we want. If this is what we wanted, we would go to our own school,
What was the process? Like, because I think especially during like COVID, right? A lot of parents, because I cannot tell you how many parents, women, would send me articles or things that were happening in their school districts and be like, you have to say something about it. You have to raise awareness. And I'm like, yeah, and I can, but like, I don't live in Wisconsin.
Right.
I don't live in Vegas.
Right.
So what do you want me to do? And I didn't say it like aggressively, but I would always be like, you guys have to get out there. You have to get vocal, and you have to go to the school boards. And I literally remember telling people, and maybe this is what you did, and if you did, I'll be super impressed. But what I told people was, if you feel like you're alone in this, I can guarantee you're probably not.
Right.
So start going door to door.
Yeah.
And start getting the parents that are wanting to say something as well to go with you and form a group and go to these meetings. Yeah. Is that kind of what you did?
Pretty much. I used Facebook at the time. Facebook was the big social media thing.
Yeah.
I started a Facebook group, Rally for Recess, with the school name in it, and parents joined, and then it was sharing articles of research and studies that have been done on why recess is important. And, and we would take those to the board meeting and read them off and read the statistics. And the principal eventually pulled me into the office and was like, hey, what is going on? And I expressed to her, like, how we felt that she was just turning us into what we were trying to leave, And she told me to my face, you need to do your research and get your facts straight. And I was like, challenge accepted. And so I did. I went to every charter authority board meeting. I went to the Department of Education board meetings. And what I learned is that it's all the same. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's about, at least where I'm from, but I think this is a nationwide issue. It's about money. And
really,
I sat in one of the Department of Ed meetings, and they were talking about the star rating system. I don't know if you guys have that here, but it's basically how they rate the schools. It's based on attendance. It's based on the standardized testing scores, and then a few other minor things. But attendance and test scores are the biggest things. And they talked about that for 2 hours, I would say. Never one time did they talk about the kids. It was about how the test scores affect the money, how the attendance affects the money. And that's all they cared about. And I was just like, no, I can't send my kids to any school, school. Like, once you know those things, it's hard to send them anywhere in good conscience. So I ultimately decided I had my oldest daughter was in 2nd grade. And then my second oldest, I have 4 kids. My second one, she was in kindergarten, and I pulled them out halfway through the school year, and it's like, hey, we're gonna homeschool. We're gonna do this. And
what did they think?
They were young, so.
Oh, they didn't. Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, they were
really
so young.
It
didn't matter, At the time that I pulled them out was January of 2015. It was a legislative session. I found out about a bill that was being drafted for education savings accounts. And basically what that is the state money follows the pupil. rather than the state deciding how it's spent. The parent gets to decide that. So again, rallied parents, went to all the legislative meetings, and we did get it passed. They found a loophole. There was no way to fund it. The way the bill was written, there was no funding mechanism included. So it became a law, but it just sat there because there was no way to. And
this was a law that would have made it possible for the student to get the funding and for
Correct.
the parent to make the decision on how the funding was used.
Yeah. So they could use it to go to a private school.
But they found a loophole. And in other words, it made it so that the school district, I'm assuming, made the decision based on where the funds went.
Yeah, the money just stayed with the school district. Got it. So then that session ended with a law that did nothing for us, essentially. The next legislative session that came around, we tried to amend the bill so that the law so that it included a funding mechanism, but it never passed, and it just sat there for probably one or two more sessions before they used it as a bargaining token.
How often does this happen? Like in any other school district in other states, like is it just a constant thing that bills are being basically passed, but then nothing happens with them, and they're the bills that the parents are advocating for?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you combat that? Or you just don't, and that's why you decide to homeschool?
So it did get to a point where it was completely consuming me, and I realized how evil politics actually is. And I just decided that for me, I had to step away from that aspect of it because it was, everyone had an agenda. Everyone was out for themselves. And I didn't want to view every person I met that way.
And none of those agendas had the kids in mind first.
None of them. Never. It's never about the kids.
Which is crazy.
It's heartbreaking.
In any issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just school.
I remember one of the testimonies that I gave at one of the legislative sessions for the ESA bill. I told the chairwoman, I said, our children are not pawns in your game to get your whatever you're trying to get. She came unglued, told me I had to stop talking. Like, I hit a nerve with her when I said that. Because
this was true. Back in when?
2015.
So you weren't quite in the place where all the parents were being called domestic terrorists.
Not yet.
Oh, good. But you were getting there.
I'm sure I made the list in 2020.
Yeah.
But
all right. Okay. We'll get there.
So I ended up kind of just stepping back and deciding to just focus on homeschooling my kids, which was really intimidating. And if I'm being totally honest, the first 3 years, I tried to find every reason why I shouldn't homeschool my kids. And maybe there was a charter school out there that would fit our needs. And I did a lot of research, and every time I prayed about it, it was, nope, you're supposed to homeschool your kids. So finally, after about 3 years, I said, fine, I will do this.
What were your major hesitations, I guess, or the things that were like holding you back from doing it? Was it just mainly you're afraid, like fear, or what?
Some of it was fear that I'm going to fail them. I think that's the biggest reason why anyone hesitates to homeschool their kids is you feel like you're not going to be able to do an adequate job. Part of it was selfish reasons. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be at home with my kids all day. I don't get to do what I want to do while they're in school, you know? So things like that were part of the reason why I didn't want to do it. But once I finally kind of conceded to what my calling was, it got easy.
Yeah.
It was much easier from there out,
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my oldest is graduating this year. So
That's awesome.
She's going to college.
Yeah.
She's going to college with some college credits under her belt. So
I heard she got some grants and stuff too.
So she was actually offered a scholarship for flag football for a school in Wisconsin.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
cool.
It was too far.
Yeah.
Too far away from home.
Fair. That's really cool though. Okay. So basically you said that was 2000 when you went to the school boards and stuff and like the lady shut you down. When was that? What year was that again?
That was like 14, 15.
So even though you were homeschooling by when? By what year?
Excuse me. I pulled them out January of 2015.
2015. Okay. So even though you were homeschooling throughout 2015 to 2020 or whatever, it sounds like you were still involved in the school board stuff. Like you were still showing up to the, why?
I think that it's important for people to not take for granted that we have that right. Mm-hmm. Even in 2020, my kids are homeschooled.
Yeah.
I have no association to.
But you're still showing up to these
district.
School board meetings.
Absolutely. Because one, I'm a taxpayer and my tax dollars are paying for that.
Yeah.
It was when they were trying to force our staff to be vaccinated.
Okay.
And and they drug it on because
they were trying to force you?
The teachers.
Oh, the teachers.
The teachers.
Yeah, okay.
The teachers to get vaccinated. And they have tactics that they use at these meetings. Yep. You know, they keep the room really cold so people leave. They try to drag it out. So the thing that they know everybody's there for, they put it at the end of the agenda. Mm-hmm. They drag the whole meeting out. I was there until 2:00 in the morning waiting for my turn to get up and public speak. So to me, I think it's so important for people to not take for granted. Like, we have this right. Use your voice, you know? You don't have to be as bold as I am. I understand that not everybody is as bold as I am.
What's really interesting though, is you constantly tell me, and I've heard you tell others about how you feel like you're actually pretty timid, but most people are not. It
depends on the issue.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so that's the thing, right? Like you're one of the more timid people when it comes to, I mean, with just other issues and things, but like, there are people out there that are way outspoken about everything, and yet they won't show up to these things. Yep. And the question is, why? Is it just because? I mean, is it just laziness?
I think so.
It's just laziness.
I think so.
So, what do you think? What do you think breaks people out of that idea of just I'm too lazy to do it? Like, do you think it's just when you were, I guess, faced with real issues and you saw it for what it was? Do you think that's what it takes for people to realize how corrupt it is, and then all of a sudden that, like, there's nothing stopping you? Or I'm just trying to understand, like, what is the difference between the people that show up and the people that don't?
I wish that I knew. I do, because I think obviously if that's something we knew, we could get more people to show up. Even with the ESAs, you know, it's like we had a good amount of parents that showed up, and we'd have parents on social media, or we had emails back then. Social media wasn't as big. You know, that were, yeah. And then it's like, for example, we had, and this is kind of plays into the games that they do at the political level, is they called an emergency hearing for the ESAs on Memorial Day.
What?
So
just knowing that most people are not going to come. Not going to go.
And that was pretty much the case. We did have, I have to say, we had a pretty good turnout. We had probably about 20 or 30 parents that showed up, which is fair. But for the amount of people that we had networked with, It wasn't very much. I think people are all for it until it is inconvenient for them.
It's like anything else. Mm-hmm. People appreciate freedom until their own. People don't. I should say they don't appreciate freedom until their own is attacked. Yeah. Until their own is under threat. Right. Like we saw that during COVID. We see that even now. I mean, people will only get loud and advocate for freedom when it's at their doorstep. Yep. And honestly, all of us are to blame, because I wasn't nearly as loud as I have been for the last 5-ish years before, because quite frankly, my freedom wasn't in check. Right. Like it wasn't threatened like it was back in 2020. And so I get that. I understand that. I think that's something that is, you know, it's hard to swallow, but it's understandable. We take things for granted, especially freedom.
I think too, a lot of people think someone else is fighting it.
100%. Someone else will do it.
You know, somebody else will do it.
Yeah, let them do it.
Yeah.
Yep. And we all know how much of a recipe of disaster that is. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, though, because recently, I don't know if you saw, but I don't know who it was that got, I think it was, what's his name? Makari? Is it Makari? Dr. Makari? I forget what his last name is, but anyway, he got up and said that they officially are going to start removing the dyes from foods, right?
Yeah, I read something about that.
And it was because of moms. And I loved how he said it was because of Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian moms that stood up and finally voiced their opinion and and got passionate about it. And it made a difference.
Yep.
And so that kind of squashes that argument for me, because all the people are like, well, what difference can I really make? Someone else is going to have more of the ability to make a difference than I can. Right. And that's just not the truth.
Yeah.
Like, anyone can make a difference. You just have to make the choice to do it. And then especially if enough people stand up together,
Yep.
that's where you really start to make things happen.
It. And you don't have to, not everybody has to be the loud one.
Right.
Or the aggressive one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But showing up in numbers is just as important.
For sure.
You know, as the person that's actually being the spokesperson.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just show up.
Yep. I do know what you mean. I saw it multiple times throughout all of the last few years, especially during the COVID times. Like, even here in our city, there was a point where they were trying to, because we didn't really experience anything here for COVID. Like, everybody was like that. We're not doing this. And luckily we had, a pretty mild, experience when it came to that versus other people. But I remember there was one point where they were really trying to enforce like the masks and things like that. And I don't know how many people showed up to our town hall one night, but it was a lot. It was like tons of people outside, standing on the sidewalk, standing inside. And it got to the point where they were so loud and showed up in such huge numbers that the officials were like, I think there were some of them that were like crying, and some of them just freaking left. And that ended right then and there. Yeah. It was like, all right, that's it. It's not happening. Yeah. And it's like, that's something that people need to realize, is the power lies with the people ultimately. Yeah. But there's such an agenda to make people think that that's not the truth. Yeah. And that we don't actually have the power, but we do. It's the whole ants versus the cricket idea, right? Yes. Yes. If enough ants will stand up, the crickets can't, they don't stand a chance. And that's one thing, with homeschooling that I feel like is an advantage or a blessing to homeschooling, is that I get to teach my kids that. Yeah. I get to teach my kids to stand up. So we had mask mandates through, I want to think, halfway through 2021. This is in Henderson, right? Yep. Nevada. Yep. Okay. So I think through 2021, we still had mask mandates. My kids do a Bible study school. My oldest was taking at the time, and she was the only one every day that showed up without a mask every day. Her. And it's like, and she did it with confidence. And I never pressured her. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But she was like, no, I'm not going to wear my mask. And you attribute the homeschooling to that? I do, because it's a safe place to have those discussions with your kids where it's more raw. Yeah. Yeah. And you're with them all day. You're not sending them off to have somebody else instill their values in them. Right. And then you come home, and then by the time you do homework, go to sports, eat, you have 2 hours to instill your values back into them. Yeah. So being able to have them home and teach them, we have to stand up for things. You might be the only one, but you might encourage somebody else to take a stand too when you do. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, totally. I totally get it. That's actually an interesting... It made me think of a question. I believe that a large part of history has been absolutely manipulated and is taught a certain way in schools. Now, especially now, as I get older and as I do my own research, I just start realizing it more and more. So I would actually be interested to know, are there specific pieces that you have taught differently, and that you continue to teach differently than what they teach in school when it comes to history and things like that? And what are they? So I'm not sure exactly what they're teaching in school right now, because we've been out for 10 years. Okay. I'm sure I'm teaching things differently. But if I'm being totally transparent, my husband actually teaches history, because that is he loves history. And awesome. The kids will ask me something. I'm like, that's a dad question. Okay. All right. But as far as history being manipulated, I have always taught my kids to question everything, and that someone's perception is their reality. Yeah. So when we're learning history, it's from one person's point of view, and we need to look at everything
as a whole from different perspectives.
Yep.
And try and come up with what it, it is.
Which they absolutely don't do in schools.
No.
You don't learn two perspectives. You learn one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's super interesting. So I guess we'd have to ask your husband. That's because I've always wondered like what, I know that if I homeschool, I know what I would be teaching.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of perspectives. But I think that's so important. And obviously, so this is actually a perfect segue into, I think a lot of people want to homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of parents understand the importance of homeschooling, especially now in some of these other states and some of the places where the kids are being taught that to the point where they don't even know if they're a boy or a girl. Like it's crazy. This is beating a dead horse, right? But the things that are taught in public school nowadays, I think are extremely scary. And it's obviously there's an agenda behind it.
Yep.
And I think it makes parents all across the country. I know a lot of parents want to homeschool their kids, but so many don't. In your opinion, why? Like, what is it that's stopping them? And what could you say, I guess, that would help them feel better about it? Like, because I would imagine it's not as scary as it seems, but even I'm like, there's no way I'm going to teach. I'm not like, there's no way. I barely made it through high school. Like, I am not qualified. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, I feel like I would fail my kids and I don't want my kids to be dummies.
Right.
I think there's also that stigma of, kids are going to end up being weird. Like the homeschool kid growing up, we always thought the homeschool kids were weird. Not actually even meeting them. It was just kind of like what you were told.
Yep.
Which is another interesting thing if you consider the manipulation.
Yeah. Right.
Like
exactly.
don't
When you
do
know the
homeschooling,
history
you're
of
gonna be
public
weird.
schools and why they came about.
Yeah.
So I think that, like you said, the number one reason people don't homeschool is they don't feel qualified. One thing I tell parents when they ask me, about homeschooling, you taught your kids how to walk, you taught your kids how to eat, you taught your kids their ABCs. You've been teaching your kids since the day they were born. That doesn't change, right? You find a way to make sure that they learn it.
Right.
Homeschooling, I think I saw an article last year that said there's I can't remember, 5 million homeschoolers or something.
Wow.
Like it's grown exponentially over the last decade.
Well, that I don't doubt at all. Especially, I bet you those numbers are probably way higher over the last few years, for sure.
Yep. So there's so many resources out there. So many resources. You can't fail your kids unless you're trying. I mean, honestly.
What do you mean? Explain that. Because it's one thing to say it, right?
Right.
Explain,
so many
resources?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
Well, there's thousands of different curriculum out there to choose. You have some that you can get that is the whole shebang. You got your science, history, English, math, and you just follow it. Another reason why I homeschool is every child is different. Every child has different needs. Every child learns differently. I piece together everything that I do. So, and I'm not afraid to change a curriculum in the middle of the school year if it's not working and just try something different. There's so many curriculums that are open and go.
So I would imagine that it's kind of like any other product then, because if there's thousands of them, right? And how does a parent know which one to choose? Are you basing it off of reviews? Are you basing it off of is it 5 stars? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what?
So, a lot of the curriculum I decided it's exactly that, just reviews. Throw it in Google, throw it in YouTube. You pretty much can find reviews on any of the curriculum.
Okay.
A lot of people do flip throughs on YouTube. They will have most curriculum on their website will have sample pages that you can look at and things like that, just to kind of see if it fits with your flow, with what you're looking for. So,
right. What are some things that, because I'm just assuming that there's parents listening to this that are like that. I'm very interested in this because I want to do it for my kids. What are some things that pitfalls? What are some things that people should be looking for that they wouldn't normally know to look for within these courses? Are there things that they should be avoiding? Anything does that make sense?
I think
if somebody said, okay, I'm going to go and look at these different reviews. I'm going to pick this course. What are some things that courses have that you're steer clear of that?
I can't really say that there's anything
Okay.
particular because, like I said, every child is so different and has such
Right.
different needs.
Right.
You know, the biggest thing is going to be learning your child and
Right.
how they learn.
Yep.
And my son, he hates coloring. He hates drawing. And I was using a handwriting curriculum where they had to draw and stuff. It was part of the curriculum. And he kept skipping. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't like to color. Okay. So we won't do things that make you color.
So what did you
know
switch
I
him to?
he just does copy work or whatever, you know?
Interesting, because that would be the opposite of my son. My son literally is obsessed with drawing and coloring.
Yeah. He
So he
has
would love
zero
that.
interest. He would rather build Legos and
Yeah.
dig in the backyard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coloring is not,
Yep.
it's not his thing. So
Makes sense.
it's just learning those little things about them and what interests them. And another thing with curriculum that you're not married to your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think I have to do just, you're the teacher.
Yeah.
You know your child best.
Right.
Adjust it so that it's doable, you know?
Are they expensive?
They can be.
Okay.
It depends. There are some free curriculum out there. I don't know if I can drop names or.
I have no idea. I don't know the rules of that.
But there are websites that offer free curriculum. The one that we started with was The Good and the Beautiful.
Okay.
It is a faith-based curriculum.
Okay.
And they're pretty much their math and their language arts for first through fifth grade are completely free. I believe math is actually free all the way up, where you can just download it and print it yourself.
Interesting. But that's basically universal with all the different curriculums. Some of them are free. Some of them are. Okay.
Some of them are very expensive.
Okay.
When you get into looking at buying the whole thing for all the subjects and basically recreating school at home, which I do not recommend. Those you're looking at thousands of dollars.
That's actually a good point. I mean, because I would look at this like anything else where, I just the immediate thing that I thought of was like how to relate that to like fitness, right? They don't get into fitness because they feel like they have to have all the supplements and they have to have all the tools and they have to have the program and they have to have everything lined up to be able to even start. I would imagine this is also kind of the same where a lot of parents are like, I don't even know where to start and I need to have all of these things to make it possible. It sounds like that's not the case at all.
It's not. No, not
So
at all.
what advice would you give there?
So one of the things that's recommended when you start homeschooling, especially if you're pulling them out of a classroom, is deschooling is what they call it. So it's basically, they recommend 1 month for every year that they've been in school. I believe that's what it is. And you don't do schoolwork.
Really?
For that time. And you do field trips and you watch documentaries and you find what their interests are and you just explore those in a natural way without
And
textbooks
observe how they learn.
Yep.
Interesting.
And it's important for parents too, because we grew up going to school.
Yeah.
We're conditioned that education looks a certain way.
Yep.
And we have these expectations and this is what they should know and this is what they should be able to do by the time that they're out of school. But
is that how you felt when you first started?
Absolutely.
So how did it evolve? What are what happened that made it evolve? Did you just finally realize like
you just kind of you learn like it's okay if it's not my thing became as long as we're progressing. It might take us 18 months to finish a curriculum instead of 12 months. You know what I mean? And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's the beauty of homeschooling is you get to work at your child's pace and you get to see when that light bulb goes off and it's the coolest thing to see it.
Well, and it's like who determined that it was 12 months anyway?
Exactly.
8 months, 9 months, 10, whatever it is. Like it's like anything else. Who determined that that's the rigid schedule?
Yep, exactly. And there's a big saying in homeschool is
you're kind of breaking free from the system.
You're never behind in homeschool. There's no such thing as being behind when you homeschool.
Yeah, that's
because
interesting.
it's retraining your brain as a parent, especially if you grew up in a classroom. And I mean, even 10 years in, there are times that I'm like, oh, I'm failing them or I'm not doing this right because it's supposed to look like this. But then I kind of come back to like my why. Why am I homeschooling? I'm homeschooling my kids so that they can be strong and independent and learn to be advocates and learn how to learn. Right? They might not know it.
Not just be regurgitating information.
Yeah. I might not have taught it to them, but if they're interested, they're going to figure out how to learn it. And it's giving them that skill set of how do I find it if I want to know it?
Right.
You know?
That's really cool. Super interesting. Like because I felt the same way. I mean, Maddie and I have even talked a couple times about like, should we homeschool? And every single time it's like, no, because we like, I barely made it through school. So, so you don't, I mean, the whole idea of like, are you smarter than a fifth grader? I don't think I am. There's a lot of things where I'm like, there's no way that I would know the answer to these math equations.
I'm going to tell you a secret. I use Google a lot when I'm helping my kids with
Chat
schoolwork.
GPT nowadays?
Yeah. You know,
Fair.
like, I remember one time we were doing an English lesson, and I don't remember exactly what it was.
But how do they learn then if you don't, like...
We learn it together.
Okay.
I relearn it because I was taught it at one time. We relearn it. I relearn it. She learns it for the first time, and we learn together.
And you're telling them that too? Like,
Absolutely.
hey, I don't know the answer to this. Interesting.
Yeah.
That probably creates kind of like a bond, a stronger bond between you as a parent and a child, I would imagine too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, mom's kind of on my level.
Yeah. And it's like, I knew it. I mean, I got good grades in school, but it also kind of proves to you that like a lot of the things that you learn in school, you don't use in your regular day to day.
Interesting. What would you say? Because again, you always learn that, I mean, not learn, but like, it's always this idea that homeschool kids are the weird ones and they're not, and they're very like timid and very, it actually sounds to me, just based on everything you're saying, that it would actually create more confidence in a kid. Do you think that's the case? Do you think it makes them more confident, and in what ways?
So, for example, my oldest, academics is not her strong suit. She has dyslexia. She struggles with schoolwork. If she was in a public school, I have no doubt in my mind that they would have crushed every bit of confidence that she
and she'd be totally
gained.
Depressed.
Absolutely.
Feeling like she doesn't belong.
Absolutely. And at home, it's like, hey, your brain works different. Let's figure out how your brain works and let's work with it. You know what I mean? And she gets to gain confidence in, oh, I did this. And I don't think she would have had that if she was in public school.
What about the fear of your kids not having the social life? Because that's probably my biggest fear. My biggest fear with homeschooling is that my boy, my girl, they wouldn't have the social life that they need to be able to, I don't know. I just feel like we as kids need that social life, or like sports and things like that. Like, what about the parents and even myself that we're nervous that they'll lose that because they're just always home, right? Like, am I just missing it? Like,
so I think that that's like a false thing that they've kind of like created to make you feel that that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
It does kind of fall back on the responsibility of the parent a little bit, because you have to put forth an effort to get your kids to co-ops if that's your thing. We never did co-ops. We were way too busy with sports. But there's tons of co-ops out there where you get together, and some of them are curriculum based, where you're learning together and you're doing presentations.
Kind of like a boys and girls club thing?
No, it's more just a collective group of parents that get together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so some of them are just for fun. They do the holiday parties and the things like that. And then sports.
But you did sports, you said.
We did sports.
So you just got them involved in sports.
Yep.
So if you're homeschooling your kid, can your kid be involved in school sports?
It depends on your state laws. The one thing that Nevada does right with education is their homeschool laws. We have amazing homeschool laws.
Okay.
So my kids do get to participate in our zone school sports.
Do you know what states don't allow that off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I know I was talking with somebody in Texas, and Texas is not as nice about that.
Really?
Right?
That doesn't make any sense,
because they're
Texas
so
is
sports
such a
driven.
huge sport. Yeah, like football central.
Yeah.
Like, why? That's weird.
Yeah, I thought it was weird too when she said that. And I didn't realize that not all states had the same laws when it came to sports, and
right.
It came up in like a Facebook group, a nationwide homeschool Facebook group or whatever. But yeah, my kids get to participate in school sports. Actually, this is kind of funny. My 16-year-old daughter, she wrestles.
Oh.
She's a wrestler.
Wow.
And she is a sophomore this year. She went to state.
Dang.
Placed third.
Really? Good
Yeah.
for her. That's awesome.
So she's breaking all these records at the high school, and she doesn't even go there.
That's awesome.
That always reminds me. She actually got female athlete of the month.
Good for her.
For the high school. And I'm like, I told her, all I can think about is that Mean Girls line when they're like, she doesn't even go here. You know? So,
okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's because I think that is the biggest fear with the sports thing, right? Like a lot of the places where I made the most friends or like learned a lot, having the right coach, like that makes a big difference in kids' lives.
Absolutely.
And so knowing that you can still participate in that, but also not have to go through this rigid, insane system that I think is more of a friggin' prison sentence than anything nowadays for kids. And just, it, like you said, it's kind of a recipe for creating this just super subservient, dependent, depressed kid. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. And I don't know the stats. I would be super interested to hear what they are, but like the increase in depression and anxiety and all these other ADHD, like all this stuff over the last, who knows how many years, I bet you is totally and completely, directly related to the school system. It has to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the school days are becoming longer. The recess is becoming shorter. There's so many studies from other nations. Finland, for example, like they get, I think it's 15 minutes of recess every hour.
What the freak? Why does Finland seem to just have it all together?
They have their education down. Like,
isn't Finland also the one that has like a gun per household or something like that?
I don't
or is that
know.
Switzerland? I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I'm just like, there's so much research out there of the importance of recess. And, you know, when we were kind of going through the whole thing with...
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know any of it off the top of your head that you could...
It's been a lot of years.
Off? Yeah.
But one was the Finland, you know, they have recess and they're one of the highest, ranked highest in the nation.
I'm going to try and pull
for
it up.
education.
So Finnish schools prioritize outdoor recess, often including multiple short breaks throughout the day, emphasizing its positive impact on learning and well-being. Studies suggest a correlation between recess and academic performance. With children being more attentive after breaks, Finnish schools typically offer 15-minute outdoor free play breaks every hour, allowing students to recharge and engage in physical activity. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
There's tons, yeah.
One of the important things when I was reading it, one of the important things is PE does not count as recess because it's structured play. It has to be unstructured free play so that their mind can just kind of
So there's no
reset.
rigid structure to
Right.
it. Interesting. Yeah, this is crazy. There's a lot of studies on it, actually.
Yeah, tons.
Why Finland has the best schools. Finland, yeah, this is super smart kids in Finland. Like, all right, cool. Well, good job, Finland.
Right?
Yeah, that's really cool. So, yeah, I mean, because again, I think these are all things that it's just like anything else. It seems like it's just all a friggin' system, Tiecha. Like we're all just part of this insane system where we've been lied to. And I'm telling you, I feel like this is what everybody has heard for so long. You know, the same myths that your kids are going to be weird. They're not going to be social. They're not going to have the ability to do the sports. They're not going to learn as much as they should. They're not going to be prepared like they should. And it seems to me like everybody I've ever met and I've met a lot of people in the last couple of years that have done homeschooling, that have been homeschooled, even some of my friends now are like, yeah, I was homeschooled. And I'm like, you're totally normal. You're actually more normal than most people.
Right.
Like they're the people that aren't the weirdos.
Right. They're not the ones that falling in line.
Yeah. They're the ones that, And this has always been something that I've wondered for myself. I've talked about this a lot, but I was an absolute nightmare as a kid. At least that's what it seemed like.
Right.
Because I spent most of my time in a detention room. I spent most of my time getting yelled at, most of my time being told that I wasn't going to amount to anything. My counselors themselves told me I would never be able to go to college, that I didn't have a chance in hell, that I was going to work a dead end job. Like it was all that stuff. And I was, I felt like I was very rebellious my entire life. And I mean, I was.
Yeah.
But
would you have been if you were given the correct tools?
That's the thing. It's interesting because is it because of the rigid structure that made me a rebel? And there's kind of a catch-22 there because I also believe that my rebellious behavior is what made me who I am today.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I'm able to see through the bull crap, the fact that I'm able to not go with the flow and kind of break free from that system and think for myself. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I just won't let anybody push me around.
But I think that that's probably an innate personality trait that you have.
Interesting. Yeah. And so what's even more fascinating is as I think about this literally right now in this moment, I think it was when I was about, when do you graduate high school? When you're 16, right? 17, 18.
Yeah.
So I think I was probably about 15 years old when I quote unquote, what everybody called turned a new leaf.
Mm-hmm.
So for my entire childhood, I was a nightmare. Like for sure. My parents, I can't even imagine what my parents went through and what my teachers went through and all that stuff. Right. And I believe it was when I was like 15 that I started to be like more obedient,
Mm-hmm.
a lot less crazy and a lot less, belligerent, I guess, the different terms that I was given.
Right.
Right. And it's so funny because as I think back right now, that was all in an effort to fall in line. That was all in an effort to stop being told that I was, the
rebel rouser.
Yeah. To stop being the black sheep, because I felt like that's what I needed to do to conform. I felt like that's what I need. I needed to buckle down. You know how many times I've heard that? You got to buckle down. You just got to buckle down. For me now, buckle down means a whole other thing.
Right.
Buckle down means just freaking get things done, run people over. But like back then it meant, no. You just got to conform. You got to do your work. You got to pay attention in class, do your homework, stop being such a rebel, stop getting kicked out of class. And it's like, did I have to do any of that? And who told,
who makes those rules?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And look, I went through high school. I got my degree. I very much cheated on some tests to get out of high school. Sorry, guys. Shout out to Hans. Hans got me through science. But and then I went to college and I actually got my degree. But
was college easier for you?
Than high school?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It was easier because I felt, well, for one, I had just gotten back from a mission. I did like a year before I left my mission. And the year before, I was very much not interested in school. I was dating a girl that was in Utah and I was leaving every weekend and I could care less. I think I got D's in every single class. It was a total waste of time. But then when my mission came back and I did really well. Now, what's really interesting though is around that time is when I actually got on Adderall because a friend of mine, because I had a hard time focusing.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
That's not a lie. It is 100% the reality. And it has been my whole life. Yeah. But especially in college. And I remember my buddy was like, dude, I had the same issue you have. I would be trying to write a paper and it would take me days. Anyway, he gave me an Adderall for the first time and I freaking wrote that. I wrote a 16-page research paper. I'm not exaggerating, in 3 hours.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, yo, this is the limitless drug.
Right.
If you've seen the movie Limitless. But anyway, I will say that did help.
Yeah.
And it has helped to this day. Even it's much easier for me to focus. And not just be completely all over the place. But, in college, though, it was hard. It was still hard to, quote unquote, buckle down. Right. I think the reason why it was easier in my mind, though, is because it didn't have as many, I don't know how to put it. I just had a way of navigating college that I feel like most people didn't. I had a lot of friends. I had a really cool social life.
I think too, once you get to college, right, your professors are more like, this is on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That actually is exactly what it was. It's the fact that there was no longer professors don't push you to do things. Right. They just say, here it is, you do it. And if you don't, oh well. Right. Luckily I had some cool professors that also would help me out and stuff. Yeah. But for the most part, there's no such thing as like you're being forced to do this.
Right. You're accountable for what
and
you
if
produce.
you're not going to pass your test, it's because you didn't go get the tutor you needed.
Right.
So I took it upon myself because I just wanted to be successful.
Yeah.
I took it upon myself to get tutors and to do the things that were necessary to actually get through school.
Yeah. I'm curious, had you been given the tools when you were younger on how to deal with that? Like, for instance, my daughter,
My ADHD.
Yeah. So my daughter that is 13,
Mm-hmm.
she totally has ADHD. I've never had her evaluated. I know she has ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
She's a dancer. And it was like, do your English and you can go dance for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then go back and do your math. You know what I mean? Or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what? You're really agitated today. Why don't you go sit outside and do your schoolwork?
Yeah.
And it's like teaching her those tools of how to recognize, like, this isn't working for me. Let me try something different.
Yeah.
You know, and it'd be interesting. Like, had you given those tools as a kid?
I bet it would, but I had nobody to do that. And I feel like it's because, I mean, quite frankly, back then, nobody really understood that.
Yes.
It was like the ADD kids were the weird ones that were taking, what's that? What's the other one?
Ritalin.
Yeah, Ritalin.
Yeah.
They were the, you know what I mean? Like they were the Rugrats.
Right.
That was like,
And it's
that's
sad
that kid.
because I really think that it's really natural for kids. It's not natural for kids to sit in a chair for 6 hours a day. Like, that's not normal. That is not the way their brains are designed.
Right. Well, and luckily, like I said, my parents didn't put me on drugs when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing because they definitely could have.
Right.
But they didn't. And so that was a good thing. I think I agree. I think if I had learned to channel those things and learn more about myself, I probably would have been better off. And you know, but I also will say, and I've said this many times, I do believe that modern day medication in some ways it's helpful for people. Like, there's no denying that my medication has helped me throughout my life. There's no denying it. And I was actually, and I'm actually somebody who is very, very hesitant to try any medication because, quite frankly, in my family, there's history of really, really bad drug abuse. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen what it can do. And I was petrified that I would get addicted to something.
Yeah.
I've never done drugs in my life. Like I've never, not once. And I say that and people are like, really? And I was like, yeah,
Same story for me.
I never had the urge. And it's not even because of my religion or anything like that. That's obviously part of it. But like the main reason is because I know I have seen it firsthand. I've seen what it does to people.
Absolutely.
And I didn't want anything to do with it. And I consider that a huge blessing, honestly, that I was able to experience that because it made me never want to experiment with that stuff. And I could have many, many, many times. I mean, my friends in high school were the burnout skaters.
Right.
and the football players that drank every Friday.
Right.
You know, but like, I never had the desire because I knew what it did. But that being said, when I got my first prescription for Adderall, I remember clear as day asking the doctor, I was like, what signs should I be looking for to know if I'm like
becoming
dependent, addicted,
yeah.
or like if it's becoming something that's no longer just something that's helping me. And they straight up said, if you feel like you have to up your dosage regularly, or if you feel like it's not enough, or you start taking more, like obviously that's a huge sign.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. For years and years and years, I have never once felt like I needed to get more, up my dosage, take it more. As a matter of fact, I take it a lot less over the years. Like,
because you're probably learning how to deal with it a little bit more.
I am. I'm definitely learning how to deal with it better. And also, you know, it's just, I look at it as a tool that helps me when I really need it, but not something that I have to have. And I've been an advocate. Like I've spoken about it on social media and stuff for kids or for parents that, not kids, but parents that have college age students or whatever, or even just young adults that feel like, hey, I've been considering this. And I always say, like, it did help me. Yeah, it did. I can't deny that. And I may be wrong, but based on all the studies that I've read, and I've read a lot of them, all the current studies seem to point to the fact that there doesn't seem to be any crazy, like, long-term effect. It doesn't seem to have anything like that. So, but anyway, I do think, though, to your point, that if that had been discovered and channeled a little differently when I was a kid, I definitely can see that it would have been different because, you know, what did we do before those medications existed? Right. Like, obviously we figured it out.
Kids probably weren't sitting in school for 6 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. So,
All part
that
of
goes
the
back to the
system.
homeschooling thing. Like that goes back to why homeschooling is such a valuable tool. Cause I think when we talk about homeschooling, especially as parents, it's always about, well, I just want to get my kids out of school because I don't want them to learn about all the crazy woke agenda stuff and all that.
And there is that aspect to it, but
For sure.
And that was kind of the reason, the beginning of why I did it, right? Is like the bureaucracy of the school system and everything. And then as you get into it, you realize like you get to see your kids like grow. Like you're the one that sees that light bulb go off, not somebody who in next year is not even gonna,
and they're not even paying attention
like,
to the light bulb.
Yeah.
To them, it's just another check mark.
And
maybe not all teachers don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of good teachers out there, guys.
There,
like
for sure.
I had good teachers. I know that you're out there. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just, and it does create that bond, and my kids and I we're all very close. I'm close with all of my kids. They share with me things that I don't think they would have. They would be telling their friend, or they'd be telling their teacher, or they'd be telling, you know what I mean? But like they're sharing that with me. And it's just really cool. And at first, when I said the selfishness part of why I didn't want to homeschool, it's like I'm with them literally all day, but I'm not just like kicking my kid out the door. She's 18 now and she's graduating this year. I'm actually sad that she's leaving me. You know what I mean? Like I'm excited for her. I know she's going to do amazing things, but
you guys been together every single day.
It's such a special bond that you get.
Do you feel like you've kind of, cause we, especially now, like my kids are 3 and 5, they're going to be 4 and 6. And the constant thing I always hear is, enjoy it while you can, enjoy it because there's going to be a time where you don't see them and everything. It's almost like when you homeschool, you skip that stage of like, they're never there during the day. They're always at school. They're always with their friends, stuff like that. And so I'm curious, do you think, obviously you said it makes you closer.
Yeah.
Would you also say that, cause parenting's hard. Like I think
there's no manual.
There's no manual and it is
they're all
absolutely
different.
the hardest thing. And you're constantly questioning whether or not you're good enough and whether or not you're raising them right, or whether or not you're reacting the right way or responding the right way. And like, now you have social media where you see all these, I constantly get bombarded by these Instagram reels that are like, treat your kid this way and do this. And it's like, yeah, it's so damn easy to say that when you're not in the moment. And your kid's like, oh, like but would you say that homeschooling, do you feel like it's actually made it a little bit easier to parent? And in what ways?
So back when I was like, I'm not going to homeschool, I can't do this, whatever. I just said that I had prayed about it. My prayer, I was not patient. I was not patient at all. I
really
yelled every day. I was psycho mom screaming at my kids almost every day. And I just remember like pleading with God, like, hey, if I'm going to do this, like I need help with patience. And like a switch, like a switch. And it's cool because we get to grow together. You know what I mean? Like I mess up and you can be transparent with your kids.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell my kids now, like, hey, just so you know, my patience is at like 0 today. I'm just giving you a heads up. You know what I mean? Tread how you want.
That's interesting. Okay. So with that, you're talking about how like you were a yeller, right? And you said that, would you attribute the ability to not be as much of a yeller when you started homeschooling stuff to just like an answer from God? Or do you think it's also just the homeschooling in general that helped to kind of like calm you down and make you more patient? Like where, you know what I mean? Like,
I think it's a little bit of both. I think too, like when you're with somebody all day, your children all day, you learn how to work together. You figure that out. And so I know what my breaking point is now. So I'm going to walk away, or, hey, why don't you go sit outside for a few minutes and read your book while you calm down, or vice versa. Yeah. So the beauty of homeschooling is you're always learning together, whether it's academics or just how to live together, and be together. Yeah.
It's interesting because my boy right now, we're actually trying to figure out what the heck to do because he's very, very creative and very like, he's a little boy. Like he is not the type of person who is going to sit still. He won't. And even though he's got his mother's temperament for sure, he also has a lot of attributes for me. And one of those things is he doesn't do well in a classroom. He doesn't do well in a controlled environment. And so we've actually had him in a Montessori school, and it was good. But like the problem is they lump everybody together. Yeah. And so he's hearing things that he shouldn't hear from sixth graders, for one. But then on top of that, he's just not really learning the way that we want him to.
Right.
And I mean, but this also goes back to you where you're just like, what's that timeline? Because we're basically basing that off of, well, technically he should be a first grader, but who says that?
Right.
And maybe that's partially our issue. And so we're just trying to figure that out too. But you know, it's interesting you say that, because I can see how it would bond more to your kids for sure. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And just going at their pace. Like I said, there's no such thing as behind in homeschool. Most of my kids, I would say 3 out of the 4 of my kids did not read fluently until they were probably 8 or 9.
Really?
And they're all great readers now. Like they can all read just fine. But there was never that push. Like you have to do this by the time you're 7. You know what I mean? It was.
Do you feel like,
as long as there's progress, we're doing good.
Do you feel like it kind of like evens itself out at some point though? Is it almost like just a universal thing where like, no matter what, they're going to end around the same time anyway? Like, do they all just kind of end around 18? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you know when to pull that trigger and say, okay, you're ready to go to college? If all they're doing, does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you're not really on a timeline.
I mean, yeah.
Is it just kind of a natural progression that just happens?
It is. So, with my oldest, we looked into doing dual enrollment her junior year. Mm-hmm. She was like, I don't think I'm really ready for that. Okay, so we'll do it senior year. It was rough. It was a rough start. Yeah. But again, the beauty is we're doing that together. Right. And I'd sit down with her and we'd go through her assignments together. And then by the second semester, she didn't even need my help. You know? Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like that's a lot how parenting is. Like one thing that surprised me as we've, because again, 3 and 5, like that's how old my kids are. So I'm a very new parent still. But one thing that has amazed me is all the things you worry about, like that your kids will have to learn. I mean, even just talking, like how do you teach your kid how to just talk normally and how to like do normal transitions and just speak in general, right? Or potty training or any of that stuff. What's crazy to me, and I'm sure a lot of other parents can relate, it just kind of happens. Yeah. Like even the other day, this was literally yesterday. Miles wrote his name for the first time yesterday. Yeah. And he had never written anything up until yesterday. It was like all he knew how to do was draw little like figurines on paper and stuff like that. But like all of a sudden now he's writing his name. He's tracing his name, or not tracing, but copying it. Right. But like he couldn't do that before. Right. And then it just happened. Mm-hmm. So part of me just wonders if that's kind of like the natural thing. And again, the system, the school, all of this has kind of pulled us away from that natural progression of each and every individual. I remember reading a quote that was about, you put popcorn kernels in a pot. They don't all pop at the same time, but they do eventually pop. But they do eventually pop. And that for me, I was kind of like, oh, that applies to homeschooling. When you're homeschooling 4 kids, it's going to look different with every kid. Yeah. When it clicks, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When they might need a little extra heat behind. Yeah. Well, and I think also, it's not just the system that I think holds parents back from doing something like homeschooling, or even just from in any situation. I think it's also the perception and the idea that everything, like we talked about before, has to be perfect. Like we are surrounded and inundated by people who are trying to put off this idea that they have the perfect life. They're the perfect mom, the perfect dad. They have the perfect family, right? Like, and it's all this idea of everything on social media is the highlights. Right. I would assume that also is very prevalent in the homeschooling industry. I would assume that a lot of women that are homeschooling their kids probably see other women homeschooling their kids and they're like, why am I not so put together? Mm-hmm. Or like, what is that real? Absolutely. So I have named myself the conductor of the Hot Mess Express. That's good. Nothing in my life is like picture perfect, which it's not for anybody, by the way. No, it's not. And I remember when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to do this homeschool thing. This is my calling, and looking for people to follow on social media, whatever. They all start their morning around the table with their morning basket, and they say the pledge and they say family prayer and, whatever. They
and
start
they do
their
that
day
every morning?
Every morning. And
do
I'm
they
like,
actually do it every morning, or do they just post and make it seem like they do? Because that's what
that's
what I would imagine.
Yeah, they may do it that way.
Yeah.
I think some of them actually do that because that's what works for them.
Yeah.
That's not my personality. And for a long time, I tried to make it that way because that's how I thought it was supposed to look.
And it probably made it way harder.
It did. And it was very frustrating. And it was like, and at a point when all my kids were kind of like elementary, early junior high, it worked. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen every day, maybe a couple of times a week. But as I got older, and I would feel guilty that I wasn't doing those things, that we weren't reading our scriptures in the morning together, like sitting at our desks in our homeschool area, and I finally just realized like, that's not why you homeschool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
it's
homeschool
okay.
so that you have the freedom of the schedule.
Exactly. And it's okay that it's messy.
What's really, really interesting is that's so relatable to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world now where you have all these people that are saying that your morning schedule is so rigid and I'm cold plunging for an hour and a half. And then I'm, doing this and doing that. And like, they have the perfect morning routine. And even just in general with the business, like this is how I do my entire day is like perfect. All these people act like their days are perfect and they have the perfect system and everything like that. And it's like, you have to do this in order to be successful. And it's just like you said, that's not why you homeschool. That's not why you become an entrepreneur.
Right.
You become an entrepreneur so that you have the freedom of your schedule and you can work at your pace and your schedule and your speed.
Yeah.
And so, I am not the type of person that has an hour and a half, 2 hour long morning schedule every single day. It looks totally different. The one thing that's the same every single day is I lift, right? I go to the gym, but everything else for the most part is totally different. I'm in a different call sometimes at 8:30, 9 o'clock. Sometimes I take a call at 7 o'clock. Sometimes I'm on the phone in the gym because it's super important and I can't lift for 30 minutes. Like it's just different, right? Yep. Sometimes I don't journal in the morning. Sometimes I journal at night. Sometimes I don't journal.
Right.
It's just, I do what needs to be done to move the needle.
Yeah.
But there's no rigid schedule. And honestly, that's why I love what I do.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I want to be an entrepreneur because
you can make that choice.
Yeah. I don't want the rigid schedule. I want to be able to control that. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's actually, I love that. That's why you homeschool.
Yeah. It's like, I have one kid that getting her up before 10 o'clock in the morning is, it's not fun, and so she starts schoolwork a little bit later. I have, my older two, as they've gotten older, they're very self-disciplined and they get up, they do their schoolwork, they get it out of the way, Mm-hmm. My son's pretty good. Sometimes I have to remind him like, hey, let's sit down and do schoolwork. Mm-hmm. And then there's some days where we don't get to it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, you're not recreating the classroom at home. You are creating an environment where learning can happen.
Interesting. So. And I think that's probably one of the biggest fallacies is a lot of parents try to recreate the classroom.
But
it's like, why? You literally pulled them out of it
for a reason.
Why,
exactly.
Why recreate what you tried to get them out of?
Yep, exactly.
It's that relates to so many other things. Like, why do we continue to try and put ourselves in a system that we're trying to break free from?
Right.
Like, ultimately, that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Right. In so many ways, with politics, with government, with everything, our lives in general. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about breaking free from all these different things that hold us down. And yet so many times we put ourselves in the same exact situation.
Right back into it. Yeah.
Right back into it.
Yep.
It's super interesting. That's good. I'm trying to think where to go from there. So let's talk about that really quick and then we'll end with this. So speaking of kind of breaking free from the system, you also started your own business.
I did.
So on top of the homeschooling, which is another thing that I guarantee you a lot of parents are like, there's no way. There's no way I have the time to do that. You started your own business.
I did, yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I kind of always did like T-shirts, vinyl and stuff as a hobby. In 2020, I felt really impressed to start an apparel company. Mm-hmm. I've always been super patriotic. I've always been one that advocates for things. And all the censorship that we were seeing
What censorship?
Yeah, none. That's why I have, 50
Yeah.
people view my story.
Yeah.
But to me, the First Amendment is so important. It's the First Amendment for a reason, And so I started my apparel company, 1A Apparel, and it was based on the thought of, you can censor social media, you can censor the radio, you can't censor what somebody's wearing. And it's a way to get a message out to everybody on shirt, and
That's
you do
right.
the same with your
That's
Patriot.
exactly
and
what I did. Yep.
You
And it's
can't
funny
censor that.
yeah, everybody that comes at me and says like, oh, all you do is sell merch and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you find me a better way to put a message on somebody every single day that actually like
that people are going to
sends
see
the message,
Yeah.
and I'm all for it.
Yep.
But there's no better way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So with that, I mean, I'm assuming it's just kind of on demand, right? Or do you hold inventory?
I have a little bit of inventory just because when I do shows and stuff.
Okay.
But I do print everything. I have a printer at my house that I print it with. I've kind of gone a little more custom lately because that's kind of where the business has taken me, So I do custom stuff as well.
And how do you find the time to do it? I guarantee you that's what everybody's thinking right now. How do you have the time to homeschool and run a business?
It kind of works out. It helps that I have a very supportive husband. He can kind of pick up where.
Yeah, but at the same time, your husband's in law enforcement, right?
Yes.
So again, no excuse, right? Like that's one of the most demanding and busy jobs on planet Earth.
Yeah.
How the heck do you do it?
I just make it a priority. I find the time. There are days where everybody else is in bed and I'm downstairs in my office printing shirts, so you make it work, and it's important to me. So I find the time. And along with the whole, it doesn't always look perfect. There are days where I'm like, I have 60 shirts I need to print. You guys are on your own today.
Yeah.
My kids are older. I can do that. My youngest is 11.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it for 10 years. They know what they need to do. So I have that, ability to do that occasionally. Where like, hey guys, if you need me, you know where to find me.
Yeah. That's awesome. So where do you, I guess, what's your main avenue outlet for selling the t-shirts? Is it mostly online, or what do you do?
Yeah, mostly online.
Through your social media, or do you do Amazon, or?
So I do have a website, and then mostly just people reach out to me on social media for custom stuff.
Okay. So has it been pretty successful? I asked this knowing that I would say it has been, but I'm curious what you think, and also because we talked about this in the beginning. You were part of the Free Collective for a while.
Yeah.
The group that I ran for a couple of years. I'm actually going to start opening that again.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But yeah, I guess where were you at before? Where are you at now? What does that journey look like?
Mm-hmm. So before I started the Free Collective, I was just a hobby business. I was also working 30 hours a week, 9-to-5 job.
On top of school.
On top of homeschooling. And it was a lot. The Free Collective, I joined that with the purpose of growing my business so I could quit my 9-to-5.
Yeah.
And when I joined the Free Collective, I was averaging about $6,000 a year in sales. And
as a side gig, that's pretty
As a side
good.
gig, yeah, not too bad.
It's not too bad.
Last year, though, my gross revenue was $24,000 after doing the Free Collective and
that's awesome.
Learning techniques and how to.
What do you think was the biggest shift for you?
Mostly the confidence I could do it.
That's all it was.
That's all it was.
It has nothing to do with the mechanics, nothing to do with the shirts.
It was just like, hey, I can do this.
Yeah. Just believing that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's really, what's funny is one of the main reasons that I shut down the Free Collective. I mean, it was because I didn't have a lot of time, and also because I felt like I wasn't giving even though everybody else, from what I know, nobody ever felt like I wasn't giving the right attention to it or the amount of attention I needed to. Everybody felt pretty good about it. Everybody was getting results for the most part. I think it was a good thing overall, but me personally, I felt like I wasn't putting in as much as I needed to. But what's really, really interesting is one of the reasons why I shut it down too is because it just got to the point where I was like, you guys know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You just don't have the confidence to do it. And I can only teach about confidence so many times.
Right.
I can't give it to you. You have to just believe that you can do it and go make it happen.
A lot of it was like the exercises that you had us do too, where we had to really reflect on ourselves. Like, why are you doing this? Why is this important? Mm-hmm. Those kinds of things were really, I think, what
the anchors
helped me. Yeah. The anchors.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's, and that help. But the thing is, the anchors are what help you build the confidence.
Right.
Like that's what it is. The anchors they're not going to give you the answer to running the business.
Right.
They're just going to make you realize why you're doing it and why you're capable of doing it.
And then give you the grit to be like, okay, this happened, but let's try a different avenue.
Yeah.
Let's try something different.
Yeah.
know?
That's really cool. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it's successful. Any last things? What would you say to anybody who's listening, parents, individuals, business owners, whatever? Like, what would you leave them with?
That, well, as far as like the homeschooling thing specifically, you know your child best. You know what their needs are. You want what's best for them. And when you're homeschooling them, you're going to do the research and you're going to figure out how to help your children be successful. Mm-hmm. And you're going to help them boost that confidence. Maybe, like we're learning a little slower, but we're still learning. Mm-hmm. We're still doing it.
Yeah.
Just, you have to focus on the progress that you've made in everything, really. Yeah.
And it seems like it's anything else with parenting. It's like, you're afraid you might not be able to figure it out, but you're just gonna figure it out.
You have no choice.
Yeah. Like
you have no choice.
You're not going to fail because you won't let yourself fail.
Yeah.
Because you won't fail your kids.
Exactly.
And I think it's important to point that out because again, while there are a lot of really good teachers out there, teachers are not going to have the same passion that you have as a parent to make sure that your kid is successful.
Exactly.
Especially when they're focused on hundreds of other kids.
Yep.
You have one focus, one singular focus, and there's just a different level of passion and love behind it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Which changes everything.
Yep.
It's awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
And I think that is a message that a lot of people need to hear. And who knows, maybe we created a bunch of homeschoolers.
Yeah. I'm all
so
for
where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram. It's the best way to find me. It's at the.mom.Tiecha.
Okay. The.mom.Tiecha. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if they want to support you, how can they do that?
You can support me by going to my website at 1aapparel.com.
1aapparel.com.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yep. See you guys.